Hey, thanks for checking out Music Talk from the North State. I am Paul Young, your host once again, and I'm privileged today to be with Karin Williams, who is one of the owners of the club that we're in right now called Lost on Main. We are in downtown Chico right here. This is a fabulous spot within this region and a culture for music. We're going to talk about the business as Karin sees it, and reveal some of the other sides that sometimes we don't think about as either musicians or music industry hopefuls and so forth. To know who you're asking of what and what they see and what they need, it makes it easier for the symbiotic relationship to work together if we understand each other's needs and desires. And I find that a lot of folks coming up in this business have a viewpoint that I'd love to break, frankly, of understanding what it takes to make the offer to each other and for your audience. So that's my goal. I'm privileged to be here with one of the owners, and downstairs is also Karin's, and her partner Kyle own Down Low. Downstairs is the Down Low. I like to think of it as the bar that people want to hang, the pool hall to the other side, and where musicians play many nights a week. And I've also had the privilege of doing that with your jazz nights on Thursdays, and you've been faithful to that for 10 years. I'm a fan of Karin and what she does here. So turning to you, how did you get into this? What crazy idea did you want to be an owner, co-owner of a venue and a nightclub?
I stumbled into it. I did not set out wanting to be a venue owner or manager or run this business. In fact, my degree from Chico State is in dietetics and food science.
Really?
And chemistry, yes. I went on to hold sales roles, and just prior to being involved at Lost on Main, I was a vice president of a healthcare informatics company. So totally very conservative industry.
Right.
And more of the 9 to 5. I traveled all across the country, but I had good business principles coming into this. And my now husband, who started Lost on Main, people would take advantage of him. And they would say, you know what I can do for you, or you should do this, or I can make you so much money. And nobody ever had his back. And I did. And I thought, this couldn't be too hard. It's just about managing relationships, making decisions, having budgetary things in mind. Boy, was I fooled, because it is very involved. It is very. But so that's how I started. I wanted to have his back. And, when I started roughly in about 2013, we quickly did a remodel. We moved the stage from over there to where it is now. So after that remodel, we used outside promoters, but then I broke my back and I was laid out flat for an entire summer, and I picked up the phone and I just started making phone calls to agents. And from there it cascaded. And I've really assumed a lot of responsibility.
I've seen it. You're running this place, and with 2 floors of it, you're booking the venue, you're running the actual part of it. You were saying it could be up to 15 employees a night just on this floor.
Yes.
And there's another one going on downstairs.
Yes.
That's a lot in your hands.
Yes, very much so. My title is controller, trying to control or have an effect on every single aspect, which I feel like a good venue owner needs to have that understanding. You can have a great manager, but for me personally in this endeavor, I like to be just that much more involved. Part of the venue owner's pure responsibility is, yes, the shows and making sure there's good entertainment, but it's being fiscally responsible, making sure you have a good team, and making good hiring processes, budgetary constrictions, and restrictions. Also the legal entities, a liquor license, the police presence within Chico, and how those ABC and the police work together to put other restrictions on us that other communities don't have. So I have to take that in mind. And I also have to be the face of Lost, and reaching out to community members, always being welcome to hearing people's ideas or concerns, even if I don't agree with them. I have to put myself in people's shoes and hear what they're trying to say to me and what their concern is, and maybe making some change or having the frank discussion with them about why that's not a smart idea. So there's just a lot of things involved.
Is that a stressor on you day after day, or is that
Absolutely.
Just really?
And I will not go back to that pace that we were before COVID. Moving forward now past COVID, and when things started opening back up, we then decided to do a remodel. So we were closed for a total of 4.5 years.
Wow.
And there's like 4.5 years of under 21s that had never experienced Lost on Main to know that it was coming back.
Yes.
And so, there's this whole segment of this town being so young And
This is definitely a college town. It's one of the roots of it. Chico State.
and Butte College too.
Yes, 20 minutes away is also our community college. And this is like an island here as a region where it's about an hour and a half to major towns on north and south. It's a revolving young culture here.
It
an
is.
Established community as well.
It is, and that can be trouble in and of itself, because you've got maybe dedicated fans or attendees for 4 years and they move on, to go start their real life.
Yeah.
But where we're centrally located, it has its pluses and its minuses. Pluses is that we are a good navigating or touring stopping point. So between San Francisco and Portland, we are a great place to have a night.
And we're going to talk about the agents and how you try to leverage that if it's the right place for them and that kind of thing. We're sitting in a venue right now that hits at maximum 300. The choices that agents and bands and musicians tend to want to make about the size of the venue and what's possible there, and whether there's a strategy to that could be looked at in a few ways. We'll come back to that part of things, because you're talking about agents, and that's not necessarily what I hear from other venues around here.
Well, every venue, I'm sure, has their own relationships with agents or agencies, and mine is unique to me. What I do find is that depending on the level of the band, national acts, sometimes we only get to have midweek shows. And then you run into, well, it's a school or work night, and so people don't want to come out. So then we have to open our doors earlier to make sure that we can get a decent attendance.
Right.
But ultimately, I would rather have those national bands on a Friday or Saturday night for maximum attendance.
Right, and that becomes what the larger market is. They're probably making that booking. There's a thing with agencies, and that can also be the radius clause, no performance within this space or time before, if we've done this in another market. That's some of the things you have to think about on a Friday, Saturday night.
Absolutely.
And an agent, for the most part, I hope agents don't find this disparaging. They have a role. But agents, for the most part, make 10% off of the money that the artist makes when they're doing that tour.
And they only care about numbers.
And that's their job, is to basically set up the guarantees of how much will you guarantee that my artist will make, and then what's the higher end of those kinds of things. And it's in numbers for the costs and the revenue that they're thinking about on behalf of their client.
What I have found is that once I can get an agent to bring bands in, and once those bands experience what we offer, we're friends for life. We do business, for a long time. But it's just being able to get agents. There are other venues and promoters in town that might have more long-standing relationships with these agencies, and I find it very interesting that agents go through these outside promoters to do shows here, because there's so much more of a cost involved instead of coming directly to me. But I'll take a show if it's good, no matter how much, and if I think it will sell.
Right. The capacity of the room is something that an agent's going to think about. I'm going to go for what is a kind of one of the strategies that they might go after. This room right here can take around 300, something like that. Maybe a little lower than that, but it's close to 300. That's the size of a venue at a ticket price at the front door, kind of a thing, and whether they're going to sell merchandise. They're doing those numbers like that. The El Rey holds 800. Usually they don't get to 800, most of their things. The Senator, which is right up the street here, gets to about 1,200. Those are older venues in their feel. Karin and her business partner have put a very modern edge on the lights and the sound and the feel of this room.
Our lighting production, our sound equipment, and sound engineer, we do provide a very good show.
Well, I appreciate you talking about the aesthetics part of things. It was one of the first things I found immediately noticeable, the feel of everything. If you're coming through this door, you're coming for an experience. There's probably a door charge, because that's how a lot of these artists get paid. There's a huge, beautiful bar over there, and food and drink and those kinds of things really often are the thing that runs a club and makes it so this is successful for them. The feel of the experience is what people are after, and I don't think anybody should be confused about that.
You mentioned door charge, and that is a particular challenge for where our location is. And what I mean by that is, when people go to a show at Sierra Nevada's Big Room, they are going there with that destination in mind. They know what they've maybe bought pre-sale tickets. It is what it is. I would guess that they don't have to deal with haggling. Because we're downtown and our door is wide open, people walk by and just have general, they hear music, let's go in. And then they find out there's a cover charge. And I do not make apologies for what our cover charge is, because the talent, I'm scouting good talent.
There's a business model part that you're talking about. The door charge or the ticket price and so forth is actually very much the source of revenue for many of the shows for the artist. And if they get into merchandising and so forth, it could be 20 to 30% of their money is if there's something that of value they sell or flip to another
Which, by the
experience.
way, we don't take any cut of that, and most venues do.
So, but
We
that
give it
dependency on
100%.
it, yeah, that's true. If you're from the audience perspective, there's a lot, especially here at this level and in this town, where it's the cost to get in that's going to the artist, not the venue itself.
But these college kids, they want their money to go otherwhere, otherwise to like alcohol. So that is a challenge. People just
And it's a variable up and down the street.
Sure it is.
Duffy's is right up the street, and that might be a cover charge on a given night.
But Duffy's is a bar, and we are a venue.
Yes, right.
So it's
and
really
down the
not
street,
comparable.
those directions, there's places that you can drop in for a drink, or right downstairs, and it won't have the same kind of thing if that's what their objective is.
So I can book the best talent, but if people don't know about the show and they're just walking by, they do sometimes scuff.
Okay, let's go another level deeper, because you know who my audience is and what I'm trying to show them as a value kind of thing. So we're getting into the sort of musician side, maybe even what the agent might be thinking about when they're looking for the income. We want some value back for what we do as musicians in our time of rehearsing and planning and the promotions and things that we go through, and we're looking for these moments to be some of the payoff of that investment. And it still stays in a position very often for most musicians and bands where we're still falling behind. We're still investing, it's not coming back.
Right.
It is the Chico thing I've noticed is more often I've seen the door charge is the way that you can have what comes off of that door or as a large percentage of it.
What comes in through the door, often 100% goes to the headliner and the supporting act.
Yes.
I do really rely on local artists to bring their circle of friends, to help me promote, to bring people in the door for bands that are killing it in larger markets, but maybe unknown in this market. Having said that, though, what we have to make off of drinks has to cover so much. So we're not, everybody thinks that venues make so much money. They don't. I mean, our insurance is so lofty because of liquor.
Go on.
Yep. We own the building, so we've got building insurance. Then we've got the business, for both businesses, that insurance. Then we have our utilities, we have our employee costs, we have our product costs. What comes off of that is true profit. It's a very small margin.
If we were just to go backwards and actually put dollar amounts on any one of those things per month, including just to...
Our electricity bill alone
this is huge.
Is like $8,000 to $10,000.
And this summer it's hit 118 outside, and you've got a high ceiling and holding all this kind of thing.
Well, we don't keep
I've
this
seen
on all the
studios that that have a feel like this, recording studios, and it was $1,500 a month just to keep the board and the room cool, kind of thing. And that comes off of basically what it takes to run these venues. This is going back to my point. If you heard those, I almost think make sure that you heard those kinds of things for almost some awareness of what the owner has put into what they're investing in, so that we have our experience and we understand it from the other side. It's not to say that we're not important on all sides of this, but if we understand each other's needs and costs, we get to know each other much better about how do we do this. When you said the door being something for the 100% of the door when it's local, that really does put the pressure on that band to say, we need to promote this along with you.
If it's a door deal, you bet. Because the more people you bring in, as long as I cover my minimal sound and light cost, and yes, there are other costs, but I'm willing to sneeze.
15 employees, you said earlier.
Right, and I do not include that in deducting from the door.
Right.
It's just a cost of doing business, right, wrong, whatever. That's how I feel. I also am an advocate for these local bands when dealing with agents who only want to give them $250. I try to get at least $500 for openers. Doesn't always happen, and a lot of times it's out of pocket. Have we been successful with every show and meeting those guarantees and make sure every cost is covered? No. But especially at the beginning of your career, be that person to say, I can, I do, I will. Even if you don't necessarily know how to do it, figure it out. Never overlook an opportunity, and especially at the beginning of your career, you're going to have to do things sometimes for free, just to build up that experience, right? When you're in a major city, and San Francisco and LA, you've got millions of people to draw from. And in Chico, we have 100,000 plus people at best, and then you carve that down into different segments, and the student population is maybe 20,000 at a top year. And of those percentage of students, what are going to go out?
Chico is a different kind of an environment in that way. There's a lot of word of mouth and a culture of a community kind of things. Those words could follow fairly fast, especially if you're talking about the kind of music you're talking about. There's a different kind of network of that word of mouth. And I think that's really specialized to the region. I don't see that necessarily being as easy to do even from the audience point of view.
We are a live music venue. That's what we do best. And we've had issues with nights where we've had DJs and that younger crowd come in. You asked what makes a night a success or a failure.
Yeah.
Well, sure, liquor sales are one thing, but a great performance, high attendance, those are the easy benchmarks. Making sure everything runs smoothly is a great component to what makes a successful night. What makes a night a failure is when your roofers do things last minute before a rainstorm and it turns the coating into sludge and it's raining inside. And then you have to cancel a show. That's a failure, an epic failure. Absolutely.
Okay.
On a Beatles show that was going to be a sellout. What also was a failure is I had another show just in February that canceled 2 days before. It was to have been a sellout show, but there was an emergency by one of the bandmates and they had a crisis. We kept the openers and then we kind of built another show around it, just again, because of the relationships I have with people, we were able to still make a show happen that night. So there's a lot of shuffling you have to do last minute.
I want to hit that from a few angles because that's how you can see it from the owner's point of view and the things that could be I called it like what you consider a failure kind of a thing. There's up to 15 staff here. And you said you want things to run smoothly. I'm not talking about what they could do wrong so much as when that organization or disorganization or you have an expectation, what does that look like when it's going really well or if there's something that maybe we don't see as well as you do?
It starts with my artist liaison, who I depend on so heavily. Somebody that's going to embody my vision, or I should say our vision, how I like things to be run very succinctly, very tightly, just from the beginning when a band loads in.
Yes.
And there are different levels of that. So you've got your national touring acts that sometimes have large tour buses, so finding parking, getting here, making sure that there is parking. So
that's not easy here.
No, it's not. So my artist liaison kind of sets up how things are, deals with load in, gets the green room all set up with all of the things that the writer that I've shopped the writer for.
Writer is actually like for the agency saying what they want as a band to be here.
Because one of the things I do think sets us apart is our hospitality and how we treat bands, and I'll hit upon that later. But so for a night to run very smoothly, it involves our artist liaison, it involves our kitchen, making a catered home-cooked meal for these bands.
Really?
Taking dietary considerations into the picture, and then making sure we have enough product in the bar, making sure nobody's calling in sick or showing up late, those kinds of things, and then making sure all the equipment works. Sometimes we have issues with the lights, for example. Just last weekend, one of the lights took 2 hours to turn on. I mean, so all of those things, if they're going like clockwork and we have good ticket sales, no brainer.
Yeah.
It's a success.
Right.
But there are a lot of things happening behind the scenes. I have a high standard for myself and I have a high standard for those that work for me. I am a great boss if you are doing your job. The moment you step off that, you're gonna hear from me. And so it just takes like using your gray matter, showing up on time. Those are the easy things. Trying to predict what I want or how to respond to a customer's request.
That's what I was going to say.
It all fits into what makes us a great venue.
I'm getting a reveal that I want right there. It's a good one to have when we're talking about almost any business, and you do have that reputation, I say with kindness, and it doesn't ever scare me as somebody's liaison we ever have to work with. I know she's running a business, but the representation of what you're looking for is the quality assurance of a experience and that kind of thing. And you're trying to give it to your audience and you're trying to give it to your artists. And that retention is important. If the audience member has a great experience when they come here, they're more likely to come back.
Absolutely.
Earning a new audience member, it takes far more work than making the ones that are already here feel like they're a part of something. And you're talking about it from the agents so that you have it with the artist experience, those kinds of things. So it becomes a recurring business for the talent side.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, because those agents represent multiple musicians. And while I know what I like, I have to also be mindful of the new trends in music. I regularly look at other through Relics magazine and their tour posters for usually festivals on the East Coast, but I see all these names of bands that might be unheard of, but I kind of hone in on that, and then I ask the agents about that.
Okay, you've hit two topics I'd like to spin from there. One is you see all the kinds of posters and artwork and the things that go with it. And you do have a sense of aesthetics for what you're looking for.
Yes.
And you're representing.
I think I even told you, I don't like band photo posters.
Right, no, we've had that conversation.
And we went back and forth on our poster, so I'm involved even at that level.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen the consistency of that. So there is a brand element of how you're perceived and how you want to be perceived that comes through in your artwork as well. But there was also, you said you're doing some homework there. You're looking
absolutely.
You're trying to find the artists that maybe don't have as much of that name that's a touring act, but why would they be interested in being here? So you're doing a lot more work than running this place.
Absolutely. I try to get as much done early on in the process, weeks in advance, because there's always those things that crop up that are unexpected, and you have to allot time for that. Mm-hmm. You can only put on anything good in life with good planning. Mm-hmm. Sure, sometimes it's fun to work off the cuff.
Nothing goes exactly.
Nothing ever goes exactly as planned.
Right.
But if you've got a foundation, you can go from there. There is no typical day. Sometimes I'm up very late at night, so I say my day starts about 10 o'clock. Sometimes it starts at 8. Sometimes it starts even before then, depending on what I have on my plate. But it can go well until certainly 2 o'clock in the morning. And if bands are staying at the band compound, which we offer, and we have air hockey tournaments, well, it can go to 3 or 4, or sometimes 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. So It's like nonstop. I do try to take a break in the afternoon, and I let Missy do her artist liaison duties. Mm-hmm. I kind of get my second win, come back in and, run those operations. Mm-hmm. But I recently had a wonderful compliment by an agent, a very top producing agent at a very well-known agency. One of his bands came through here in April, and I circled back with him afterwards to tell him what a great band it was and what a great night it was. And he said, well, Karin, Lost on Main is one of those rites of passage venues that young bands need to play at. You provide a great room, and and that was a wonderful compliment.
But I want to talk about the folks that want to get their chance to be at Lost on Main.
I get approached a lot by musicians wanting to put on shows here, whether it's local and they come up to me personally, or whether they come through our website or an agent. I would say the one thing I do not like is, this happens more locally, is when an artist approaches me on an off night that they're not performing and they have been drinking and they want to talk to me at like the 10 p.m. hour or something like that. I'm still doing work, but I'm not at that position of my business day to talk about things. So I always tell people, follow up with me tomorrow or sometime during the business day. But if somebody is drunk and they're just saying the same thing over and over again, I'm immediately turned off. I don't care how great their music is, I probably don't give them a shot.
I got you. What do you want to see when they're trying to present their band or as an artist, and they're not someone you're familiar with? Let's go for the local bands. What do you look for a specific electronic press kit, the kind of numbers they're getting on social media, a particular one? What do they need to give you as either the proof or the pitch?
Well, a lot of times I hear about local bands through maybe either my friends that saw a show out in the community, or just by me hearing about, because I track what other venues or bars do in this area to see who's playing. I'm looking for prior experience, but I'm also looking, especially for these local bands, somebody who's not playing too much. And more importantly, somebody that's going to be an advocate for our show and help me get people to attend.
Okay.
Right?
And that's hard for younger, if they're not busy, that the fact that how are they going to get people in here is a question that you have to ask and they have to ask.
Well, right, and I mean, again, like if you're the opening band for a national act, I don't want somebody who played last week down at the Goose to have a show here. I mean, there's got to be some build-up, some excitement, and if they're being overplayed in this area, it's unattractive to me because I know what it's going to do. In other small bars, you can have 50 people and it looks packed. You have 50 people in this room,
right?
It doesn't look like anything. So, but I'm also looking for professionalism. Most bands, I get to help them curate their stage plot and the things that a venue will ask of them, so that they then have that in their cachet to take on to other markets. And then I also have relationships with other venues like the Boom Boom Room or the Crazy Horse in Nevada City, and I regularly talk to those bookers. And if there's exciting stuff, exciting bands happening in Chico, I regularly mention those so that they can get booked in those other markets.
Okay. So you're still at the point of saying that you're checking relationships and experience and sort of a vetting of a process through word of mouth and allies, as opposed to, because I would think that you would also be looking for certain kinds of data or relationships from a digital presence where they could actually bring those kinds of people in.
Well, sure, I look at likes, but local bands don't normally have data. The agencies will. But now I found out that data is only as good as what you send in, and agents, of course, will only send in those top earning shows. I also look at Live for Live Nation and their website, because it's a news source. So I look at those, I read stories about bands, and it kind of name drops other things. I also read Relics magazine, which is very key, because it has a feature every publication on bands you need to know. The top 5 bands.
Gotcha.
Yep.
I was going to add to that, there's quite a number of tools that aggregate that kind of data now. After working at Universal Music Group, some of my best friends in that business ended up the folks that are looking at data analytics for the company to see trends. That's how they often, through artist repertoire, will sign an act, they'll see those kinds of things, but it's also the way you measure the success of seeing what you have put out as your effort, and then what does that come back. And to think that data, it feels icky to a lot of, or just unfamiliar to a lot of musicians to go with facts and data as opposed to the gut feeling. But it's frankly what every business does outside of all of this, and we're not thinking about artists.
The music industry,
Why is a loaf of bread on that shelf? Why are we going to spend that much money at Nike? Why am I going to follow that influencer? And those kinds of things. It's a business, and those are the points of evidence and proof of how people behave in consumer behavior.
I can't tell you how many times a band comes to me and says, I can sell out your place. I can do this. I can do that. And it most of the time does not come true. Let's talk about failures. I can book the best bands, but if nobody knows about them and the show is poorly attended, well, several things are going to happen. People will leave. People won't want to come back. Won't want to come back because they won't have that FOMO experience. And agents will start passing me over for other more gross producing venues. So social media is a critical point, and one in which before COVID I did everything, including social media, and I'm at the point now where I realize I can't do it all, and I'm having to farm out certain aspects to social media experts, and I'm looking for that person or company that can help continue our brand and get us new customers. And that definitely depends on what kind of entertainment I'm booking, but social media is huge.
You have a very wide net that you're casting for groups that are touring versus groups that are here and that kind of thing, and the relationship part of it. You're thinking about your brand here, but I think our audience here, as I'm coming to a close, our audience really needs to think about what relationship they're having through the platforms they use, and which one of those platforms, and what are they making an offer? How is that a recurring kind of experience for them? That's authentic, or it's not going to work, frankly. A great video, but I'm not really talking to you. Or an announcement of my dates. Frankly, it's not a relationship.
But Facebook became the main staple, and then Instagram, and now it's TikTok.
It depends on the generations, I think, that are each one using that.
And some people say Facebook is not relevant anymore, but it does great for events as opposed to Instagram.
And also certain demographics that's what they want to use.
Right.
So I do want to come back to the Down Low and talk about 7 nights a week and how we get started comparing these things in different places.
At the Down Low, we do more local shows. On Wednesdays it's DJ night, Thursdays it's the jazz night, but then on Friday nights we have Jeff Pershing doing his open mic night. That is hugely successful. He's great. We have open Saturday nights, and then Sundays are karaoke nights. So it's local, smaller stuff.
Let's get into that one more and talk about some of the local opportunities and how that compares to other ones here, and what makes Chico as a region. I'm talking about music from the North State. What this region is maybe different than other regions, or is the same, where you can use the information we're doing in this podcast to really understand it from multiple multiple levels for multiple regions that are outside a major market. That's what I really wanted. I want to thank Karin for giving us her time. I'll have some of the links and things that we just talked about down in the file descriptions. And I hope that you're going to join us again for the next one. You're seeing I'm trying to give you the reveal of everything that is on the other side of what you're hoping to do if you're looking to be in music as part of a business. I hope we're giving you some value.